Welcome to Honeybee. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. Real stories of love, lies, and betrayal, where every truth stings. Let's begin. When you spent years learning to keep your emotions in check, moments that are meant to embarrass you lose their power. That's what I told myself the night my girlfriend decided to make a scene, pretending to break up with me in front of an audience, expecting I'd crumble or beg for her to stay. I can still remember the evening vividly. The chatter, the bright lights, the faint smell of beer and grilled food. It was a Friday night at a popular rooftop restaurant our friends loved to visit. It had the kind of crowd that liked to watch drama unfold. Laughter echoed between tables, glasses clinked, and every now and then, someone shouted across to another group. I never liked loud places, but she thrived on attention. That should have been my first warning sign. Her name was Clara. Confident, sharp-tongued, and always the loudest in any room. She had a charm that could draw people in, but also a need to always be at the center of everything. I used to think it was confidence. Later I realized it was insecurity masked as control. That night, she wore her favorite red dress, the one she said made her feel untouchable. I should have noticed a difference in her tone when she called earlier that day. Too cheerful, too rehearsed. But I brushed it off. When I arrived, she was already there, surrounded by her friends. The laughter was too loud, the smiles too forced. She waved me over with that polished grin that didn't quite reach her eyes. I sat beside her, trying to relax, thinking it was just another night out. But soon, I noticed the whispers, the way her friends glanced at me and then exchanged knowing looks. Something was off. "Hey," I said, leaning closer. "Everything okay?" She smiled. That brittle kind of smile that always meant she was about to perform. "Perfect," she said, raising her glass. "Actually, I wanted to talk to you about something important." The music in the background seemed to lower, or maybe that was just my brain focusing on her words. I didn't sense what was coming, not fully, but my gut tightened. She stood up, glass still in hand, her voice carrying across the patio. "You know what's crazy?" she said loudly, enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Sometimes you realize you've outgrown someone." A few of her friends laughed softly, expecting one of her playful jokes. She liked teasing me in public, small jabs that seemed harmless on the surface. I'd learned to take them in stride. But this time, something in her tone was different, theatrical. "Clara," I said quietly, "what's this about?" She tilted her head and gave a little shrug. "Come on, don't make that face. It's not like you didn't see this coming." More heads turned now. She wanted an audience. I didn't move. I just looked at her, calmly, letting her have her moment. "You're a great guy," she continued, gesturing toward me as if giving a toast. "Really, you are. But you're predictable. Too calm, too quiet. I need someone who actually excites me. Someone spontaneous. Someone who doesn't act like life is a checklist." There were smirks from her side of the table, even a few gasps pretending to be laughs. She was enjoying herself, the drama, the power. I kept my tone even. "You're saying this now? Here." She crossed her arms and smiled, almost proudly. "Yeah, why not? Everyone knows it's been over anyway. I just didn't want to drag it on." I looked around the table. Some of her friends avoided eye contact. Others were watching intently, waiting for my reaction. They wanted the scene, the outburst, the pleading, the humiliation. But I didn't give it to them. Instead, I took a sip of water, placed my glass down, and met her eyes. "If that's how you feel, then I won't stop you." The silence that followed wasn't immediate. It built slowly, like a wave crashing after the wind dies. Her confident smile wavered just slightly. "That's it?" she asked, voice sharper now. "You're not even going to argue?" I shook my head. "Argue about what? You've already made up your mind. You wanted this to be public. Congratulations, everyone knows now." Her friends shifted uncomfortably. Someone muttered, "Wow," under their breath. The energy she created was dissolving fast. Clara blinked, thrown off by my calmness. "You're really okay with this? After everything?" "I didn't say I'm okay," I replied quietly. "But I'm not going to perform for you. The words hit harder than I expected. Her expression faltered. She looked around, realizing the laughter she anticipated wasn't there anymore. The audience she'd built was losing interest, not in me, but in her. She tried to recover. "You're just proving my point," she said, forcing a laugh. "You never fight for anything." I gave a faint smile. Sometimes walking away is fighting, just not the way you understand it. For a moment, no one spoke. The music from inside drifted out again, and people turned back to their meals. Her performance had failed to keep their attention. She sat back down slowly, cheeks flushed. "You're unbelievable," she whispered. "Maybe," I said, standing up, "but at least I don't turn my relationships into entertainment." I left my half-finished drink, nodded politely to the group, and walked out. I didn't slam the chair or raise my voice. I just left, calm, steady, quiet. It wasn't until I reached the elevator that I felt the adrenaline rush, the delayed shock of being publicly humiliated. My hands were trembling slightly, but my heart felt oddly peaceful. Maybe because I finally saw her for who she really was. On the drive home, my phone buzzed nonstop, messages from her friends, from mutual acquaintances. Some said they couldn't believe how calm I'd been. Others asked if I was okay. I ignored all of them. I didn't need anyone's validation. When I got home, the silence in my apartment felt heavier than usual, but it was a clean silence. No shouting, no manipulation, no performance. I sat on the couch, staring at the city lights outside. Somewhere out there, she was probably still trying to spin the story her way. Maybe she'd say I didn't care, or that I was emotionless. But I knew the truth. I just refused to let her use my pain for applause. The next morning, her message came in short, cold, and defensive. "You embarrassed me last night. You could have handled that better." I didn't reply. A few hours later, another one followed. "You always make me look bad when I try to be honest." Still nothing from me. By evening, she sent, "Can we talk? Please." That one stayed unread. Because by then, I understood something I hadn't before. People like her don't crave love, they crave control. And when you don't react the way they expect, it shakes the very foundation of their ego. Days went by. I stayed focused on work, went to the gym, met old friends I hadn't seen in months. My life began to feel lighter, quieter, simpler. But word of that night spread through friends, coworkers, even social media. Someone had filmed part of it. Not the start, not the worst of it, but enough. The clip showed her mocking tone, the smirks, and my calm reply. "If that's how you feel, I won't stop you." It went around quietly, whispered through mutual circles. People started seeing her differently, not as a confident, playful woman she wanted them to see, but as someone who thrived on humiliation. The laughter that once fueled her began to turn against her. I didn't share the video. I didn't comment on it. I didn't even watch it again. I didn't need to. But one night, about a week later, I ran into one of her friends, Julia, at a cafe. She looked uneasy when she saw me. "Hey," she said softly. "I just wanted to say what she did wasn't right. We all thought it was a joke at first, but when you didn't react, I don't know, it made her look." She trailed off, searching for a polite word. "Cruel?" I offered. Julia nodded. "Yeah, exactly that." I smiled faintly. "Don't worry about it." Before leaving, she said something that stayed with me. "You didn't just silence her. You made everyone realize how ugly that kind of behavior really is." I hadn't meant to make a statement. I just wanted to protect my dignity. But sometimes silence speaks louder than anger ever could. That night, as I walked home under the quiet glow of streetlights, I realized the power of restraint. How calmness, when used right, isn't weakness at all. It's strength in its purest form. And that was the night I truly let go of Clara, not when she stood on that rooftop pretending to end things, but when I decided her performance didn't deserve an audience anymore. In the days that followed, I learned something interesting about silence. It echoes louder than words ever could. The moment I refused to react, the entire script Clara had prepared fell apart. She wanted chaos, drama, and sympathy. Instead, she got reflection, whispers, and consequences. It started subtly. Friends who once surrounded her began to drift away. The rooftop crowd that had laughed that night now looked uncomfortable when her name came up. Apparently, people had started asking questions. Why did you do that to him? Or wasn't that a bit much? She wasn't used to being questioned. For someone who loved control, losing her audience was the worst kind of punishment. And though I didn't wish her any harm, I couldn't deny the quiet satisfaction of seeing the truth unfold without me lifting a finger. A week later, she showed up at my apartment. I recognized her knock before she even spoke. 3 short taps, always the same rhythm. For a brief moment, I thought about not answering, but curiosity got the better of me. When I opened the door, she stood there looking different, tired, deflated, makeup smudged, wearing a hoodie instead of her usual polished outfits. She wasn't the same woman who stood on that rooftop with a smirk on her lips. "Can we talk?" she asked softly. I didn't say yes or no. I just stepped aside and let her in. She sat on the edge of the couch, fidgeting with the sleeves of her hoodie. The silence stretched between us, heavy but calm. Finally, she spoke. I didn't mean for it to go that far. It was supposed to be funny, like a prank. I looked at her, not angry, not even sad, just quietly observant. "A prank," I repeated. "You called humiliating me in front of your friends a prank?" Her voice cracked a little. "I thought you'd laugh it off. You always stay so calm, even when I push your buttons. I thought you'd joke back, and everyone would see how strong we are." I took a slow breath, choosing my words carefully. "You didn't want to see how strong we were. You wanted to see how much control you had over me. You wanted to prove you could embarrass me and still have me stay." She didn't deny it. Her shoulders slumped. "Maybe I did. I don't know what's wrong with me sometimes. I like attention. I like feeling important." "That's not love, Clara," I said quietly. "That's validation. And you don't get it by tearing someone else down." She looked away, eyes glassy. I know I messed up. Everyone's been treating me differently since that night. People don't laugh with me anymore. They look at me like I'm the villain. Even my friends say I went too far. There it was, the reality she'd been running from. Her power wasn't gone because of me. It was gone because people finally saw who she really was when the mask slipped. "I wanted to call you," she continued, voice trembling now. "But I didn't know what to say. I've been thinking about us, about how you used to be patient even when I picked fights for no reason. You never raised your voice. You never said anything cruel. And that night, when you didn't react, it broke me more than if you had yelled." I stayed silent, not out of indifference, but because she needed to say it all. "I kept asking myself why you didn't fight for me," she said. "But now I get it. You were fighting for your peace, for your self-respect. I just didn't realize that's what real strength looks like." Her words hit harder than I expected, because deep down, I had once loved her, the version of her that existed before the manipulation, before the ego took over. The girl who laughed at silly jokes and dreamed of traveling the world, not the woman who turned everything into a performance. But that version of her was long gone. I finally spoke. "Clara, I don't hate you. I never did. But what you did that night showed me who you really are when people are watching. And that's not someone I can build a future with." She wiped a tear from her cheek, nodding slowly. "I deserve that." There was no drama this time. No raised voices or accusations. Just 2 people finally seeing the truth for what it was. That love without respect is just a game waiting to end. Before she left, she turned to me at the door. "You know," she said quietly, "that night, when you stayed calm, it made me realize something. Everyone laughed at first, but when you didn't react, the laughter died. You made them see the truth without saying a word. You didn't just make me look small. You made me see how small I'd become." I nodded slightly. Sometimes silence teaches the harshest lessons. She gave a weak smile, then walked away. I didn't watch her go this time. I simply closed the door and stood there for a moment, feeling an odd mix of relief and sorrow. Not for the relationship, but for the years I'd spent trying to fix something that was never meant to last. After she left, life settled into a quieter rhythm. I poured my focus into work, picked up old hobbies I neglected, and began reconnecting with who I was before her. For months, I'd measure my happiness through her moods, walking on eggshells, try to avoid the next argument or public jab. Now I finally had peace. Ironically, the video that had spread, the one showing her attempt at a public breakup, had become something of a moral lesson among our social circle. People talked about it not as gossip, but as an example of how composure could outshine cruelty. Someone even sent me a clip from a forum where strangers discussed it, calling me the calm guy who handled humiliation with dignity. I never replied, never claimed it. I didn't want fame or pity. I just wanted my quiet life back. One evening, months later, I ran into Clara again, unexpectedly, at a mutual friend's engagement party. She looked better, calmer, like someone who had been through something and come out changed. When our eyes met, she smiled politely, not nervously this time. She walked over, glass of champagne in hand. "Hey," she said, "you look good. How have you been?" "I've been fine," I replied, genuinely. "You?" "Learning," she said with a soft chuckle. "Mostly about myself." There was no bitterness between us anymore, just a quiet understanding of what had been lost and what had been gained. As the evening went on, we talked briefly about work, travel, life, small talk, nothing deep. Then she said something that stayed with me. "You know, when people laugh at others, it's because they think it makes them powerful. But when someone stays calm through the mockery, they steal that power back. You did that to me. It hurt, but it taught me." I nodded. Maybe that was the only way you could have learned. She smiled faintly. Maybe. We parted ways that night without promises or regrets. Just two people who had played their roles, learned their lessons, and moved on. Driving home, I thought about how strange life can be, how one moment of humiliation can become a turning point, not because of revenge or anger, but because of self-control. Clara had staged that breakup, expecting me to shatter. Instead, she shattered her own illusion of control. In a world where everyone shouts to be heard, where arguments and drama dominate every space, choosing calmness can feel like surrender. But that night on the rooftop taught me something powerful. Calm is not weakness. It's clarity. It's knowing when to walk away from noise that doesn't deserve your voice. Months later, I heard she had started seeing a therapist and was working on her self-esteem. I was genuinely glad. People can change, not overnight, but through the quiet moments of realization when they finally confront the person they become. As for me, I began dating again, cautiously, honestly. I made sure never to lose myself in someone else's approval again, because peace, once found, is too precious to gamble with. Sometimes, late at night, when the city outside my window hums softly, I think about that evening on the rooftop, the laughter, the tension, the silence that followed. And every time, I feel a small sense of gratitude, not for what she did, but for how it ended, because her attempt to humiliate me became the very reason I learned the strength of quiet dignity. I remember her last words before she walked away from my apartment. "You made them see me." She was right. But more importantly, I finally saw myself. Someone who didn't need to shout, argue, or perform to prove his worth. Someone who understood that true strength lies not in reaction, but in restraint. As I closed that chapter for good, I realized something even deeper. Sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't loud, cruel, or planned. It's calmness. The kind of calmness that turns laughter into silence, and silence into respect.